shop to do some needed maintenance. The biggest issue was slop in the idler axles that was causing tracks to come off. The other area of concern was the connection point between the transmission housing and the frame, where there were a few broken bolts and stripped threads. Here the tracks have been removed, and the worn idler shaft is really noticeable. It's really important to use oil for lubrication in the idlers and rollers. On mine, I found that grease had been used by the previous owner and it gummed up the works. Eventually there was metal rubbing on metal. The wear was obvious on the idler shaft after I pulled it out. The new shaft and bushings won't go in until I deal with some rust on the idler. The other major work I had to do was to fix the joint that allowed the crawler to be split. The frame had slots to make reassembly easier, but those deformed over time, and that allowed movement in the transmission mounting bolts. The result was damage to threads in the transmission housing and 2 broken bolts. I drilled and retapped the 9/16 12 threads in the housing to 5/8 11 and welded spacers on the frame to secure the bolts better. The result was a solid connection with no movement between the frame and the rear half. When I do maintenance on our machine, I take the opportunity to clean and paint parts that were removed. As I got into this project, I ended up disassembling much of the crawler, so I decided just to do a major restoration. With the COVID lockdown going on, there was plenty of time for a big project. Our crawler had several layers of paint on it, including yellow and green. It took a lot of work stripping down to the metal to get a good-looking finish. With a clean slate, we weren't too constrained on color, and since Cletrac produced a model in World War II, we thought it'd be fun to paint the crawler olive drab, like this picture I found online. After a fresh coat of paint, replacement of fluids and seals, and reassembly, it was time to bring the crawler out of the shop and get it back to work. I didn't do anything with the engine other than replacing the mounts, since rebuilding that was last year's project. overall, the restoration went very well, and the machine runs great.